Welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. I am your host, Gauthier the ET Whisperer. The Enlightenment Evolution Hour is a part of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Any ideas or opinions expressed by myself, the guest, or a caller may not necessarily reflect the same opinions of the Enlightenment Evolution Network. Enlightenment defined. It's the state of giving and receiving greater knowledge and understanding about a certain subject or situation. Evolution defined. The gradual development of something, especially from a simple to a more complex form. So what then is Enlightenment Evolution? The state of giving and receiving greater knowledge as we develop from a simple to a more complex human being, living on Earth for our soul's experience. Welcome now and join us as we explore our Enlightenment Evolution Hour together. Hey everybody, this is Rob Gauthier, the ET Whisperer, and you are listening to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. How are you guys doing out there? I hope everybody's had a great week. Since last week, we've had a lot of great stuff pop up, a lot of great guests coming in the future, and we'll talk about that in just a minute. We have a guest today that's going to be an amazing guest, a dear friend of mine, longtime friend, who is in the conscious film industry. He runs his own production company. He's a videographer. He's a producer. He's a director. He's an actor. He's a channeler. He's an amazing human being, Daniel James of the Tragic Hero Productions. And we're going to be bringing him in just a few minutes. Before we get to Daniel, we're going to run through the announcements fairly quickly. Next week on the Enlightenment Evolution Hour, we will have and let me make sure I'm on the same calendar day. Yes, next week we are going to have the one and only Lee Harris from Lee Harris Energy. Amazing person, great human being, channeler, intuitive. After that, Kalina Angel, the one and only. After that, Michael Lee Hill, a UFO experiencer, someone who's recorded dozens of amazing UFO footage off the Great Lakes in Ohio and Lake Erie. Amazing guy. We're going to have him on the 28th of September. On the 5th of October, we're going to have Gordon Goosenberry, and he was supposed to have been here last month, but he got very ill. He's working on the Xena project. He's not a part of our metaphysical community, but he's a creator who has some amazing stuff that he wants to share. So we're going to have him in. On the 12th, we're going to have Chris Matthew, and he is from Forbidden News Network. Amazing show, Faust Checho. After that, amazing dude with Far Out with Faust. After that, we're going to have Shelley Young, such a good person. I love her. She's an amazing channeler, amazing friend. Another dear friend after that on the 2nd of November is going to be Ruben Langdon. Then we're going to have Daniel Scranton on the 9th, Michaela Sheldon on the 16th. We're going to have the Adam Twister on the 23rd. That'll be a twist for everybody. He's in our community, but most of you guys have never heard of him or heard him speak. I don't know if he's ever shared anything publicly, but it's going to be an amazing one. On the 30th of November, Ryder Lee from Living with Giants podcast, amazing dude. And then we have a couple people we're waiting to shift in the last 4 weeks of December, and that'll wrap up the year, guys. We're almost to the end of year with our guests. We'll be taking new guests probably towards mid-December. I'll start getting more guests rounded up for the next year after. But we have some amazing people coming in. We'll be sharing that as we go. Really amazing stuff with the Enlightenment Evolution Hour. And you guys can come here every Wednesday. We are live every Wednesday. We may have one or two pre-recorded shows here and there with people whose schedule just couldn't make it to do this. But 99% of the time, we're going to be live. We're going to be here 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time, U.S., and that's 7 Pacific Time, U.S. every Wednesday we've cut out the time to do this because we think that the conversations that we have here with the different people and different perspectives about life, about our community, about channeling, about everything involved with our community is important to hear. And the people who are here are always amazing people. So come and join us every Wednesday if you want to. If it resonates, that would be great. We also have some things popping up for the ET Whisperer, and on the 24th, I want to say the 24th, I'm almost positive it's the 24th, which is a Saturday, and I'll let you know for sure in a minute. But the 24th, I believe, we're having our next channeling class, and that is where you come in and we talk for 3 hours, and you get to ask questions, and I teach you techniques on channeling. It's something that we do every month, the last weekend of the month, and the next one is, of course, on the 24th. This is going to be 3 p.m. Eastern Time and 12 noon Central. You can register on the website by going to etwhisper.com/classes, or just go to the classes tab on the top of the website, and it'll take you through a booking process. When you do that, it'll show you the 24th has a little blue dot on it. That means that's when the next class is. Sign up for that. We don't have October's up yet, but we will before this next class happens. So come join us. It'll be wonderful to see you guys. We did put up a newsletter. The newsletter went really well. We gave some really big discounts on all of our digital media, half off, 20% off of all sessions. And people who join that will always get those types of discounts. We'll find new things to give discounts for every month. But go ahead and check it out, guys. I started a little bit late, so we're a little bit behind. But I want to bring in now my dear friend, Daniel James. And if you guys haven't heard of Daniel James, he's an amazing guy. We did a short movie, which we're going to be talking about, Those Who Seek. We did that together. He did that, and I joined him. He asked me to join him back in, I believe it was 2015, which was an amazing thing. And that was about his story and his energy. But Daniel James is a filmmaker whose highest passion is producing the conscious media that promotes deeper thought, discloses hidden truths, and expands our Earth's collective consciousness. With 10 years in studying metaphysics, becoming an extraterrestrial channeler, and doing spirit work, Daniel's story is to express himself and his understandings of creation. Now through videography, company that he runs and has, he helps others express their stories too. This guy is a guy who I could spend many, many minutes talking about, but I always think it's better to get it straight from the horse's mouth. We've got Daniel James joining us. Hello, brother. How are you? Welcome to the Enlightenment Evolution Hour again, brother. How are you?
I'm good, brother. Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm so happy to talk to you and to catch up with you and just share.
I know last time we caught up, I did it with you, and I did
You
it
were on my
on,
show.
yep, and I did it on That's So Meta, and that was an amazing time together. Most of the time, because we're friends, we could just jump off the bat and start going in a million different directions. But some people here may not know you. People who are listening may not have heard of you. And we'll get to your story too. But before we get to the story of who you are and what you do, I think it's always important to start at what are the experiences in your childhood and your young adulthood and your teenage years, those things that opened you up for the bigger possibility of your story to unfold, those little things that kind of led you in to a position to be open to have a story. Tell us about these things.
Yes, absolutely. I think that the most appropriate place to start, as all of us humans, is trauma, right? Everybody
Yes.
goes through trauma as a kid, as a child, no, really, in a sense, what led to my spiritual awakening, which I think kind of happened in 2012, was a series and a sequence of being immersed in the esoteric. I'm somebody who grew up with a lot of challenges in my childhood, and when we go through certain traumas and we go through certain challenges, it it promotes a sort of rapid growth, rapid spiritual growth in a sense. And we talk about catalysts in spiritual awakenings. And I think that a lot of those sort of more challenging experiences that we go through is, in our youth, those lead to the catalysts that lead us to having sort of an expansion of consciousness that can be triggered oftentimes, in our 20s and our 30s or in our 40s. And so growing up as a kid, I was somebody who was always drawn to the esoteric and to the unknown. I always had a deep affinity to the concept of aliens, extraterrestrials, life on other planets. I'm somebody who was, drawn to whether it was a drama or a sci-fi film or a horror film, if it was about, you know, the esoteric and the things that we know little about, I felt a calling to those things. They weren't things that I took, always looking at them in terms of fiction, but I always looked at like, wow, maybe that really exists somewhere, or I wonder if that's based in some reality somewhere that, we are tapping into. And then these writers and these filmmakers and these storytellers make them into works of fiction, but they all come from some sort of truth. And even as a little kid, I just always had this knowing that there was more. There was more, behind the curtain in a sense. So, listen, like to summarize real quick, I grew up as a kid with, very supportive parents in a sense where it's like we would see UFOs, we would have paranormal encounters with shadow people and beings from like the Fey realms and alternate versions of reality, and having multiple encounters with, UFOs. Growing up as a kid, these are all things that really cultivated the type of person in me that wanted to start asking questions and really wondering, you know, what is really happening? What more is there? So like my mom is all into this stuff, and my dad was always supportive of my beliefs and my interests growing up as a kid, being into the esoteric and into the unknown. That I really had a good foundation of traumatic experiences and experiencing strange paranormal circumstances at a young age that turned me into, that sort of artist, that dreamer who wanted to just dive in and investigate more. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's beautiful. And having supportive parents seems to be something that's a common thread amongst most people who we're talking to who have very young experiences from childhood, and we're able to cultivate that with supportive parents, even if their parents didn't believe the same things, or even if their parents had a certain religious or ideological belief. It tends to be those whose parents were supportive earliest were the ones who grew the quickest and grew towards their story the fastest.
That's right.
Yeah, and I agree, brother. The trauma thing is something, uh, a lot of teachers in the metaphysical community say, well, that's just a belief. If you believe you have to have trauma in your life to teach you, or to let you grow or expand, then that is it. But I've always found it's been true to me. Everything that's ever happened to me that was bad, that lit some fire underneath myself to change or shift, or something that frustrated me, in order for me to look deeper. Those were the big moments in my life, the ones that helped me grow towards that light instead of away from it.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's a very good point. So having this cultivated support and having this amazing connection with these topics that are so intense at such a young age, where did that take you then? How did you get from being a child who had supportive parents and seeing UFOs and other consciousnesses, to being Daniel James, who makes conscious movies and who channels and who does a billion other great things?
Okay, great question, and thank you for that. Is this movie that I'm producing right now, and how it
Can you
connects
say that
directly to
again,
my
brother?
childhood. And
I'm sorry to
absolutely, can you
interrupt
hear
you.
me?
Can you say that again? Because yeah, it cut out for a second. I don't know if that's just on my side or if that's on everyone's side. Uh, but we missed the title of the movie that you're working on now.
Right. So I want to talk about this film that I'm working on, which connects to my childhood. And it serves as a motivating factor in who I am now and what I've become. It's truly integrated into like my entire being, like my whole essence. When I was 16, I started downloading visions of another lifetime, another incarnation. And this other incarnation of mine, I could see exactly what I looked like. I got a sense of where I was from, where these circumstances were happening. And this is an extraterrestrial counterpart of mine that existed, during what we call as the Orion Wars, or also the Tiamat Wars. And I was getting these visions of this incarnation of myself during these conflicts, these wars, and it was so succinct and concise and so clear that it motivated all of these questions, that everything that I'd seen in movies and everything that I understood about, you know, uh, alternate dimensions and parallel realities and life on other planets, it had to mean something very specific for who I am now as Daniel James in this lifetime. They had to be connected. I had to sort of draw this sort of like hero's journey, this mission sort of like downloaded into me just at the age of 16. And ever since these visions of this alter ego, in a sense, came to me, I had been almost totally fixated and driven on figuring out who this was, where exactly this was, when this was, and why it's important to me. Because if I was having these visions of this other lifetime of mine, clearly there's a really relevance to that in everything that makes up who Daniel James is. So these downloads at the age of 16 were the catalyst into me wanting to investigate further this seemingly important aspect of myself. Now, being a young teenager, I didn't have a lot of tools available to me or skills, but I had the mission. It was like the hero's journey in a sense. It was my calling. We all have this superimposed sort of self-prescribed mission. I felt like this character that I'd seen in a vision was my mission now. So I started to write scripts and short films about these visions that I seen. And then I started to write music from the perspective of this character that I knew very little about. And mind you, I'm 16, 17, 18 years old. And I'm starting to piece together this puzzle and find little breadcrumbs of the story of who this figure, who this being was. And I'm in my mid 30s now, so we're talking 20 years of me investigating this incarnation of mine during the. I feel like it's my total calling now, this total evolution of everything that I've done as a filmmaker and a videographer, and all of my understandings and my studies and my research into ascension and metaphysics have all been leading into what I feel like is this mission, this objective that I have to, which I'll talk about further. But that answers your question, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's very powerful to know that at that young of an age you have such a crossover with the downloads and the visualizations and the visions that you had with this other life. It's something that a lot of us do, I think, that we don't give ourselves credit for. We take it as a repetitive dream. We'll take it as an ongoing dream, or something, even a daydream that just happens to have a similar theme. There's a lot of things that we do know and connect with that we don't give ourselves credit for. How were you able to receive that as, hey, this is something important, powerful, and real? Was it an emotion? Was it a logical understanding? Was it a little bit of all of that? Or how did that process for you?
Good question. It was, in a sense, a total knowingness, like on a DNA level. I talk about this concept when I tell people about this movie that I'm making. I talk about the concept of what I call incarnational lineage. And I believe that as we are multidimensional beings that are having an infinite number of parallel incarnations to this current one that we're in now, I think that there's almost coding that's hidden in our DNA in a sense. And I mean that energetically, of course, in a quantum way, that there's memories that are coded in our energy that comes with us from lifetime to lifetime. So these memories that are coded in our DNA can be triggered by certain things. It could be a song you hear, it could be art, it could be a film you see, or just even one little scene in a movie or a TV show can actually trigger a soul memory that you have a tie to, a deep connection to, that exists in another incarnation of yours. So I think that there was a trigger when I was a teenager that sort of unlocked hidden memory codes of my incarnational lineage to this character, that when it downloaded, it hit me like a total knowingness, like, this is who I am in this other life, in this other version of reality. And he is very connected to me, and I am very connected to him. And a big part of my life will be the journey and the self-discovery of realizing who that is, and almost in a sense like connecting to him and merging to him in a way. So I had to figure out what that language was. I know what the feelings of being connected to this entity were, and his connections to me, and I know what the I could guess, what the memories that I saw, what was happening in those memories. But the feeling and the knowingness that I had was that I had to find a language, how to translate what I was seeing and feeling about how real this was for me into like a earth human 3D third density civilian type of way. And I found that language through film, through movies, through cinema, through the art of storytelling. Because whether you package something as a documentary or you package it as a work of fiction, it's still a total act of self-expression. It's
Mm.
a language of its own, where you're saying, I made this art to show you this is who I am. This is how I feel. This is what I mean. These are my intentions. This is what my hope is. This is my damage. Here it is. I made it. And film for me is that medium. It's that platform. So it was like this total pinnacle or convergence point. I'm not exactly sure what the word is. Maybe crescendo, or uh, around the time that I was 18, 17, 18, that I figured out about this very important incarnation, about the Orion Wars, and why they were important, because I do feel that the Orion Wars actually connect to Earth right now at this time in our reality, and that's an important thing to investigate too, in the journey of healing. But then how do I translate that to people that know nothing about this? How do I communicate what my visions and my thoughts and my feelings are, and my connection to this other incarnation of mine in a reality that would seem like Star Wars to people? How do I show them what that looks like to me, and show them how important it is? And I chose movies and filmmaking, and um,
That's a powerful medium too to connect with, because it's a visual aspect. It draws you in to the energy, to the character, to the story. So it is an extremely powerful thing, and this is why I always love people who have the creative, artistic talent to convey something to the greater public through storytelling. And like you said, whether it's a documentary or a work of fiction, from the perspective of that person, it's always an amazing thing, because people can take a thing of fiction and say, no, 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 that's true. This is
that's right.
true. And then people can watch the documentary and say, nah, this is kind of fake. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? So it's always the eye of the beholder type thing. I want to go back to what you said. About the experiences unlocking these little pieces and parts of past lives and kind of connecting to you. You put in words some experience that I had before I had met Treb, while I was on my spiritual journey, something that happened to me, that came, and I know exactly what the trigger was. I was sitting down. Um, this is before I had separated from my son's mom. So we were all in the house together. My son was in bed, and she was out doing something else in the other half of the house. And I was watching a documentary about the Middle Ages. And when I was watching it, they said, and after we get back from break, we're going to talk about the one thing that was smaller than a box of bread that killed off one third of Europe. And I was like, oh, all right, we're going to get into the plague. And before I could finish the thought, boom, I'm literally into the most immersive, strong. Now I see it as like an astral projection or a conscious integration. But back then I thought of a dream, the most conscious, aware, lifelike dream I'd ever had. And I was coming home on a boat. And it was, that time. It was about the mid to late 1100s, maybe early 1200s. I was just coming back from the Crusades because I had the cross on my my shirt, on my shield. And I wasn't a royal family member, but I was in the class of the higher elite groups because my family ran the entire town I was going back to. And I pull up on shore and I see fires from a distance and I panic. I'm like, oh, someone's attacked our village. So I had our whole fleet just run as quick as we could from our rowboats onto the shore. And once we got to the shore, I smelled the worst smelling thing I'd ever smelled, like burning putrid flesh and vomit. That's the only way I could describe it. And I look and they're piling bodies into big piles and burning it. And hundreds of people from the town. And instantly I panic and say my family. And I just run until I find a horse. And then I jump on the horse and go. And then when I go back to my family's stronghold, there was a pile of my family members burning. And it makes me emotional because I was that person.
Yes.
And this was the only time I'd ever had something that powerful happen. And since then, although I've had many powerful experiences with astral projection, my time with Treb, going to other planets, meeting other consciousnesses and beings, I have never stepped into the human world or the earth world in that way since.
I feel that.
So you
really
put
do.
to words that whole thing. Is this what it's like for you? These small little triggerings that send you into these things, or is it a bit more observer for you? How does it work for you when you do get these experiences of
Yes.
download?
And I resonate with your story very much because in a sense, you could connect these types of experiences to the Orion Wars where a lot of families were killed, a lot of planets were destroyed. That's what my movie's about in a sense. I mean, that's what my story is about too. I've seen this happen on other planets. And for me, it's both. I get these like synapses visions, almost like they're little downloads of a scene, like a movie that will come to me, and I can sort of observe it and unpack it little by little. But it'll just be like a few frames of something that I can see in. Sometimes I've actually been like an astral projection. I've sort of had like these out of body moments where I'm totally sort of taken out of my body, and then I'm actually taken to another time and space on this other planet where I'm in the body of this other being, and I'm actually looking through his eyes very briefly. I've had both of these sort of experiences that immerse me into this other incarnation.
That's powerful. It's a jarring experience if you're not ready for it or if you don't know
Yes.
anything about this type of stuff. But I imagine after the fifth or sixth time it happened to you, it was
Yeah.
a lot easier to handle, or maybe not.
It became just more fascinating and alluring. Actually, it was traumatic at first because you start to think like, "Wow, am I crazy? What are these visions that I'm seeing? Why is this happening?" But then when you start to see a pattern and you're starting to get more of the story, you realize that you're just being given information that's relevant to you on some sort of quantum level.
I see, and that makes a lot of sense. So, take us from the receiving of this into, and maybe you don't want to share too much because I know you're getting ready to do this project that kind
Oh
of
no, I
shows
do. I want to tell you guys everything. I'm so excited.
this.
It's
Please
like
do.
all I care about anymore.
Well, tell us how you get from there then to where you're at now, because by the time you left us in the story you're sharing with us, you've come to this crescendo and you're around 18, 19, and you're really understanding the intensity of this, the implications of this, the energy behind this. So what takes you from there
Okay.
to making films to starting to do your own channeling?
Right. So that was just the beginning of the quest of knowledge and trusting that there's more out there and knowing that someday I'll understand more of who I am on a cosmic scale, right? So as I become now fascinated and attracted to the concept of filmmaking and producing music and being an artist, that was sort of like where my human artist journey really began. So I started playing in like metal bands. I started composing my own instrumental music. Um, and I started doing like little backyard movies, with my friends as a teenager. And then I flash forward into my 20s, I was still writing and producing music with my friends and in bands and stuff. And it was really, still being very attracted to the concept of life on other planets from a very like surface level human perspective. Um, Being attracted to the concept of ETs and wondering, how can I learn more about them? Because I just knew in my heart of hearts that there was obviously more than just humans. I mean, there's obviously life on other planets, but endlessly life in creation in every direction. So getting up to like my spiritual awakening in 2012, that was really the beginning of a long, arduous journey of medical challenges, which I think another thing, just as a side note for anybody listening, I often find that a catalyst to spiritual awakenings and spiritual growth is oftentimes medical issues, medical trauma, or medical conditions can be quite the propulsion system for spiritual awakenings. Because in 2012, I got medically ill and I was in and out of the hospital a lot, and I was married at the time, and it was putting a lot of strain on my wife and I at the time, and it ultimately led to us getting a divorce. And in 2012, I was like, man, I have to do something to sort of reclaim my identity when you're in a body, in a physical vessel that you don't feel like you have control over anymore, because you're having these medical issues, and it's might be scary. It's expensive. It puts strain on your work, your life. So I really, as at that point, I had my rock bottom moment. I had a lot of aha moments. And then I had, what many of us would call a spiritual awakening in 2012. Um, and it, at this point, I was given a series of books, which really led me into, diving deep into metaphysics and the concept of things like ascension and energy and the multidimensionality of creation. And I was reading all of the Seth books now, and I read like all of the Journey of Souls by Michael Newton books, and I started to get into like Abraham Hicks, and I was in researching Jane Roberts and Ramtha, and so I discovered channeling right after my spiritual awakening. I really get into the law of attraction, and I discovered channeling. And so sort of my quest for wanting to know more about star families, what I call extraterrestrials, I call them our star families. That's when I discovered Bashar. So I was into metaphysics, I was into the law of attraction, but I needed more because I really was only using those things to try to tiptoe me closer to learning more about ET consciousness and higher dimensional beings. And that's when I found Bashar in 2013, who was Daryl Anka channeling an extraterrestrial being. That was what I really, really needed to get me to that next level of consciousness, and diving even deeper into understanding the nature of reality and metaphysics. And when I felt like I discovered channeling, that was special to me because that was the closest I felt that I could get to extraterrestrials, to every night as a little kid looking up at the stars and seeing UFOs and seeing, you know, strange anomalies and wondering, are my people out there? Do I come from there in some way? Do I have a life out there? Is there a family out there that loves me? And so channeling, I attribute a lot of who I am now to channeling because I feel like it was a really big bridge to the gap. It was a missing puzzle piece for me in trying to get closer to our star family and understanding ET consciousness. So that being said, now boom, okay, 2013, I'm still a filmmaker though. I'm still teaching myself how to shoot and edit video. I'm still producing my own music and composing music for like short films and commercials and stuff like that. So I'm still an artist. I'm still being creative and expressive through my art. But now I'm learning about aliens, and I'm learning about channeling, and getting deeper into metaphysics and understanding, what's behind the curtain in a sense. And in I would say 2000, let's just jump back a little tiny bit. Let's go back to the year 2009. I had just moved from Washington State to Buffalo, New York, and I was still married at the time to my ex-wife. And for whatever reason, now just before my spiritual awakening, I decided to dive back into this extraterrestrial counterpart, this incarnation of mine. And what little bit that I knew in my heart of hearts of who this was and where he was from, I decided to write another screenplay. I wrote a second screenplay, my first one since I was 16. And I said, I'm just going to take the little puzzle pieces that I know and make a mostly fictional story about this alter ego of mine, this counterpart from the stars. And I have always known since the day that I downloaded the first thing about him that is he wanted to be called Sirius, not because that's his name, but because that's where he's from. So we called this character Sirius. And I knew that he was a mercenary. He was a space pilot. He was a fighter pilot and a combat specialist in a war called the Orion Wars. And that's all information that I was able to download way before I got, deep into like the Superman films and which actually are really appropriate in describing what his incarnation is like, being from those other planets. Star Wars, very similar. So I produced this like no budget backyard movie with my ex-wife and my brother on like a shitty $80 like Target camera, but we shoot this little short film in my backyard in the snow. And it was the closest. I built like a bad, homemade costume for him because he doesn't look human, right? He wears a helmet, like a mask, and he has like a big sort of cloak that he wears, like a war-torn cloak, and he has all of this armor on. He looks like a soldier or a space soldier out of, like a video game is how I could describe him. Big metal mask, glowing eyes, like an Iron Man type of guy. And he's from the Sirius constellation. And I knew this much to give you guys a little bit of backstory. Really quick, this is super important what I'm going to say. We call him Sirius from Sirius B. During the Orion Wars, his relatively peaceful planet, they were somewhat, to a degree, technologically advanced, but not very militarily superior. They were invaded by a warring faction that would go to militarily inferior planets, and they would basically terraform, and they would recruit, and they would give people ultimatums, and they'd say, we're here now, and we want your willing and able to come serve with us. Because one thing they wanted to do was they liked to collect a variety of species from other planets that had different shapes and sizes and different attributes to make them um, more superior in combat, in logistics and strategy. Because if they were able to get some of the best from each of these planets, then they were a more well-rounded force. So this race, who I won't name on the air, they invaded, and they took a group, a few of us. In exchange, you will come fight for us and you will serve in our war, and in exchange we won't destroy your planet and kill your families. And that really happened. And so my partner and I at the time, she was a lover of mine. Her and I agreed to enlist against our will, but we were also military on our planet, and we fought for this malevolent faction, this warring faction, for many, impossible to measure years, because time works differently there than it does on Earth. But we served for a long time in this military faction, doing terrible things for these warlords. And so that's the premise of the story. And we call the film OMA, which is an acronym. And so now here we are in 2009, and I do this like low quality, no budget movie with my brother and my wife. And that was the very first time that I ever brought this character really to from my imagination to the screen, and did a short film about it. And the movie was terrible, and maybe I'll show some clips of it someday on the internet. But it was the beginning of me being like a filmmaker, where I was like, wait, maybe I can really do this. Maybe I can really write a script and be a director and shoot movies and edit them myself and make the music myself and fall in love with this. And I also really always really attracted to acting. And I wanted to sort of, I feel like my highest passion in the arts is to act, because you can portray all of these other characters and these aspects of yourself in sort of like a very freeing way. And so I said, okay, I want to act the part. I want to write this movie. I want to direct this movie, edit this movie, and I want to show people my best interpretation of who this being was, from Sirius during the Orion Wars. So I do these two films. It's Oma 1 and Oma 2 in Niagara Falls, New York, and they're terrible, low budget movies, but they were very important to me because they were the beginning of what led to a very fascinating, very interesting career in filmmaking and videography. So from there, I began to act more in other productions. I began to write and direct more of my own short films just so that I could act in them because I love it so much. And in the process of just wanting to produce independent films as a storyteller, I actually sort of just kind of fell into offering video as a service. And that's actually how I became a videographer, um, sort of like a career-based videographer to support my cost of living. So then I started doing music videos for people. I started doing wedding films, commercial advertisements, and even narratives and films for other people as well, like I was doing for myself. And so that sort of, when I did those two little Oma films in Niagara Falls, New York in 2009, 2010, they were just the start of actually my career in being in professionally in video production. And that just grew and scaled for many years. But what had happened was it almost felt like I lost touch with the Oma character again. I lost touch with the Oma story because now I was immersed in being a career-based filmmaker and a videographer and honing my skills and trying to get better at that so that I could do it as a service and producing films for other people and acting. And then that kind of like flashes us forward to 2013, 2014, when I started having out of body experiences, going actually to the incarnation of this guy and on the planet where I'm now witnessing like uh what it looks like there, and seeing myself more clearly and seeing my enemies. I had a general, this very frightening war general who was in charge of all of us, and I got to see him in this astral projection in 2013. And I was like, damn, I gotta do this movie. I have to turn these visions into a film because people need to see this. Maybe it will help somebody. Maybe it will help trigger memories for them. And there's got to be more people from these Orion Wars. There has to be more people who have experienced lives like this and incarnations like this. And so I write another script. Now I write a third script. I wrote one when I was 16. I wrote one for the two short films in 2009. And then in 2013, I write another one. But then life happens again. And I'm hit with more medical issues. I lost my job. Um, Life happens. And then I just sort of forgot all about the Oma thing again and just went back into videography, doing film as a service. And but it was that year 2013 that I left my day job as well. I had like a survival job, as most artists have, and I was able to go full time as a videographer. So that was a pretty pinnacle moment as well. So it almost seems like Oma, in a sense, was always this sort of like platform for me that would come and go in and out of my life in small little pieces when it was relevant for me to unpack a little bit more of the story and get a little bit deeper into that narrative. And then boom, my 3D life as Daniel James would happen. And then I would go back into doing 3D things and lose track on it. But it always kept circling back in the back of my subconscious that, Daniel, you need to tell this story of Oma. You need to show people who you are in that lifetime because it is important to the people of Earth. I kept getting this calling that like there are other people from this war that are having incarnations here that have incarnational lineage and trauma on like a DNA level from all of these past lives and future lives and parallel lives where they've experienced this conflict. And then I start getting these inspirations and these visions of like how the Orion Wars directly connects to Earth and our civilization now, and how a lot of the conflict is still playing out today here behind. That's why it sort of it became so important to me, man. So important to me to like circle back, call back to this Oma project that I've been trying to tell for 20 years and going through the process of getting into channeling and learning how to channel myself. I haven't even mentioned yet. I've been so excited to talk about this, but I actually, guys, if you're listening, I actually bought a session with Rob Gauthier years ago to have Aridif channel information about Oma for me. And everything that Aridif told me in the channeling session was right perfectly in alignment to the things that I've seen and to some of the things that I already knew intuitively that he validated and then expanded more on the story for me. And from there, I was, able to write more into the story. And channeling for me, I taught myself how to channel in 2015 for the movie Those Who Seek that Rob mentioned earlier. And learning how to channel myself, then I could actually get more information in the channeling state on my own. And then I downloaded all kinds of new missing puzzle pieces that I've been trying to piece together for years. I'd even got a session from our friend Daniel Scranton, who's still a friend of mine today. And I had an amazing session with him in 2017 about the Orion Wars as well. And he told me even more things that helped put the puzzle pieces together. So I did want to circle back to channeling briefly, that I actually don't channel much anymore myself, but I did use it as a very powerful vehicle and a very powerful method to connect me to the stars and learn more about this incarnation of mine that's so important to me. Which leads us to today, where we're doing OMA. We're now doing the movie on the scale that I've always dreamt of. It's still very grassroots. I literally have 2 people producing the whole film, but we're actually making the movie now. 20 years later, it's happening as we speak, and it really feels like, you guys can probably hear it in my voice how excited I am. But if whether we assign meaning to things, or whether we come into this life with a fate, or a mission, a path to walk, I truly feel like producing conscious media like this and telling the story of OMA to help other star seeds and other people connect the dots to their other incarnations that they can benefit from in such a valuable way by learning about these other lifetimes of ours. That is my mission. So I'm rambling at this point, but
No, it's all of it's very important, and the beautiful part about having these experiences with this counterpart of yours throughout the years, and then coming back to it now, right now, you are the sharpest that you've ever been when it comes to the knowledge of what it takes to make a good movie, to create the special effects, or the people that you can connect to that can help you with any of these various, because I've been around enough film to understand how hard it is. I bought myself a couple $1,000 cameras that were very beautiful back around the time I met you, because I was so impressed with what you and Ruben were doing. I was like, I need to learn how to do some of that, at least to make some decent looking videos for my YouTube. And I realized right then how difficult it was to get a correctly colored video, or how hard it was to get a depth field that feels real and doesn't look like it's digitally plastered on, or the billion things that can go wrong with just a camera. And that's a tiny speck of what the filming process is for documentaries. And then you bump it up even another level when you're trying to tell a story using special effects, using dialogue, using background scores, and the multitudes of things. And being around you has taught me, being around Ruben has taught me how in depth that you guys have to go. And I met another guy named Ian, who I'm going to be working on a project with my friend William, and he is also in the same thing. And I watch all 3 of you guys, and I see the great output of stuff that you've done, and realize that if you would have attempted this back in 2017 or 2018, it would have never been nearly as good as it would be now. So now is the time,
that is beautifully said, man. That is absolutely right. Right in alignment with how I feel. My partner Lauren says the same thing. She always reminds me that everything happens in perfect timing, or in divine timing. And I would not have been ready to properly do this film at any point up until now, when the circumstances and the synchronicities perfectly aligned. I felt the inspiration to just write one more script. Okay, now the 4th iteration of this story. Now that I've unpacked what's most important about the core foundation of it, I wrote a short proof of concept script that could be like a series or a feature film. And then I made a website for it. And then I just didn't do anything with it, and for 2 days, I didn't know how to market it or how to put it out there because I didn't wanna crowdsource the budget. I just really didn't wanna do that again. I'd done it before and didn't wanna go that route, and then somebody that is very, wonderful in my life as actually a client of mine just randomly asked me on my birthday, he's like, "What are you working on? What's going on?" And I said, "Well, since you've asked, I kinda have this movie that I wanna do. It tells the story of my incarnations during, the Orion Wars." And I sent him the website, and, that's kind of where this all started. All the circumstances came into alignment for me to just go in full production on it immediately, and I
Synchronicity.
synchronicity, and so here we are. We've officially started shooting the film, and I think it's gonna take another 2 months to shoot, unfortunately, but everything in divine timing, everything in perfect timing, and I'm just taking it one day at a time and being so grateful and loving every opportunity I have to bring this deeply personal 20-year endeavor to life.
That's amazing, brother. And we had a chance to talk for just a minute or two before we started, and you told me that this thing that you're working on just fell right to your feet, right at the moment you needed to, right at the moment you were having excitements to do it, having thoughts of doing it, having uh, a regeneration of that specific story. And some of the stuff I didn't know fully about. I knew that you had a counterpart, and I knew that it was based within the Orion Wars, but I didn't realize the depth and the longevity of that experience that it had as a part of your life. So imagine, I put myself in your shoes and try to imagine going from that age, the very young age of late teenage years, and then coming all the way into my 30s, and going into the understanding and compiling of the understanding of all the things that it took for you to understand this. And there are those things in our life that are just the big thing that we need to work on, excuse me, or the big purpose, the big reason. And do you feel like not only is this specific story part of it, but is it in general just telling stories for people in general so that they can find their aha moment or their activation of a previous incarnation? Or is that just one little piece of a bigger story that you're trying to still unfold?
Both. Both. My journey as a service provider in terms of offering video as a service is part and parcel to my journey in making this particular movie Oma for people. They both serve each other and support each other. So I would have never been able to do Oma the justice that I'm doing it now at the level of production value that it's out at now if I didn't also fall in love with telling stories through film, through video, and starting to do that for other people and taking those little um, off the beaten path, left turn and right turn. If my goal is to make Oma and to release that for people for two reasons, I was always going off the path to help other people do the same thing and tell their story as well, because part of my story is having the skill set to help others tell theirs. And as I take these detours from Oma, every time I make a film for somebody else or a product or a video for them, which I do full time now, and I love it, I'm learning more skills and more about myself that I can reinvest into Oma. And every time I work on Oma and I learn something that is required to tell that story, I then refocus that energy into the products that I make for other people. So they both support each other and grow together in parallel. And then the last part of that message is that Oma itself, I want people to know that I wrote it. It's only like a 3-minute movie. It's going to be a 6-episode web series, but the first episode is the most important, and it will only be maybe 3 or 4 minutes long. But that's all it needs to be, because throughout my journey in studying metaphysics and channeling and learning how to intuitively connect to spirit and to listen and receive downloads, I've designed this technique that I realized was already happening to me and to other people. That it works like this, Rob. You can actually imbue uh, art or physical objects or media, you can actually program them with energetic coding. So what I mean by that is every scene that I wrote for this film, it will look kind of like a blockbuster movie. It'll look kind of like a maybe like a it's kind of like Blade Runner meets like Star Wars meets sort of kind of that idea, that aesthetic. So it'll kind of just like when people see it, it's like, oh, Altered Carbon, from Netflix. It's kind of like that vibe aesthetically, but it's coded with very specifically written scenes that are meant to help trigger people's uh, incarnational lineage memories that are hidden within the DNA. The same exact way that there were triggers for me when I was 16 years old and I saw a movie and a scene in a movie just like cracked me wide open. It's something hit me on like a myobiological, a microbiological level in the DNA that said there's something important happening that I need to investigate further. And just that one little breadcrumb, that one little seed that you plant in somebody where they just saw one little scene from a short film on the internet can actually spiderweb into this, beautiful journey of self-discovery for somebody who just saw a little clip of something and maybe they don't know why that little clip or that scene or that short film or that song they heard was important to them, but it inspired a type of momentum in a certain direction that they need to go for their soul's discovery, for their self-discovery, for the expansion of their consciousness. So like in the bio of this program tonight, it says, it talks about that I produce conscious media. That's because I'm trying to code the work that I do and the art that I make with memory triggers that will help people connect back to their galactic lineage and to their star family and to the greater aspects of their higher selves and their multidimensional selves. So with Oma, I've done a very specific work in the writing of the script in the scenes that we depict that might not mean a lot when you watch it. When you see it, it might look cool, like wow, that's awesome, but it will unpack on a quantum level subconsciously. It can trigger memories for people that might be very valuable to them. So if anybody out there is resonates with the concept of star seeds or earth seeds or indigo or Blu-ray or any of these titles and definitions of what it might mean to have more of an awareness of your multidimensional self, then I've coded Oma with memory triggers that if there are any more star seeds out there from a planet in the Pleiades, in Cassiopeia, in Sirius, in Alpha Centauri, in Orion that existed during the Orion Wars, and you were there and you experienced something, then this film is for you. This movie is for you. This movie is coded with the energy of somebody who was there and fought in those wars and still is there now in this moment, to help us remember who we really are on a multidimensional level, so that after this life, wherever we go, whenever we go, however we go, we can get back to the right place. We can go home wherever home is for us as individuals, because everybody on Earth, I believe, yes, there is a human race, from a third density, third dimensional perspective, but we are all multidimensional beings that originate from all over the cosmos. And I believe that entertainment and film and art of all forms can be a medium that helps us rediscover who that is and reconnect to those aspects of ourselves, so that we can bring that energy into our life here and use it to help improve our lives and improve the planet and expand our consciousness, and also everything that we do and everything that we become and everything that we create as humans. It goes back into the ether, back into the cosmos, back into the stars, to our other incarnations, to our other aspects of ourselves, where we're helping them too, just as they help us here. And so that's my mission. That's my goal. That's my hope, that I can produce conscious media, whether it's a service for people through my videography, or whether it's just a little indie film, a 3-minute indie film that I made from a story that I saw in a vision when I was 16, and hopefully one person sees it that it resonates with and it helps them in some way.
Well, I guarantee there will be. You look back at Those Who Seek. This movie had an intention to share a story, but from everything that we had talked about back then, I don't think you had the level of understanding you do now of the implications even behind the creation process of many of these types of films and things. Like I couldn't imagine you back then thinking the same way you do now about helping encode the information and help access the soul memories, things like that. But when that aired and people watched it, it opened up a lot of people's energy with excitement. It opened up a lot of people's energy with resonance, and that helped them expand in multiple ways. So I think you're right. I think everything that's created from a place of excitement, love, intention does open doors for people. I listen to music and I could be going through the worst things, heavy heart, heavy mind, not processing anything, and I turn on the music that I love and my soul opens to it, and it puts me back into a place where consciousness is more available to me. I can feel my heart again. I can feel my mind again. I can clear those places up. And that's a very light version of this. The level that you're talking about, going into the triggering of memories, that's a huge thing. And I want to speak on something too, because when some people hear this, I can already feel that some people will have the reaction, I don't know if I want a memory from a war. I don't know if I want to remember lifetimes where things were hard.
Sure.
But
Sure.
for me, I would say that any recall of any experience should come to you for a reason. It's not just going to randomly pop into your head, the worst nightmares that you've ever lived through, in my perspective. But there's going to be something there that you need. That's always how it happens with the soul, with conscious intention. Can you speak a little bit about maybe some reservations of people who want to know more but are afraid to go through those things that might be hard?
Yes, absolutely. I have this sort of concept that I like to try to lean into. Might be a little bit difficult, but I try to. It's a matter of like trusting and accepting the relevancy of the things that we go through in life, whether it's a difficult circumstance or whether it's like a really positive thing that you've been trying to manifest for 10 years. There's the concept of everything in the now moment is relevant to some degree on some level. And what we do with it is, of course, up to us. How much we investigate the circumstances that are available to us in any given moment is totally within our control. But I also feel that if something comes to you synchronistically, whether that's a referral from a friend or something you heard on the television or in a movie or on the radio, something that just comes into your field of awareness, right? It's 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 something available to you to investigate. And when I talk about the concept of relevance, if it comes into your field of awareness, it's relevant to some degree for a reason. And so, do I particularly want to unpack all of this trauma from a deeply tragic uh, war and a conflict that is the type of thing that we see in Star Wars films? Do I want to like identify and associate to a lifetime of that type of experience? Not particularly. No, it doesn't sound pleasurable, but I also it doesn't sound like it. But it also it gets into the concept like this is a whole other thing, but it gets into the concept of like shadow work and where are we storing incarnational trauma and where how are we playing out versions of reality that are in some way shape or form a reflection or a ripple or a shadow of these conflicts of these wars that like I mentioned earlier in the program that are playing out right here right now today on earth and our civilization. How does that affect our planet and can we integrate it in some constructive way to help improve our civilization, to improve our race, to improve our planet, to improve the state of the earth. And I think that when it comes to shadow work, the biggest thing we can do is integrate and unpack and investigate the hard to face things that we keep hidden in the shadows so that we don't have to address them. And for me, I'm speaking for myself personally. I've attributed a lot of my medical issues and a lot of my behavioral patterns and a lot of my interests as Daniel James. I attribute a lot of these things to the experiences that I've collected and the circumstances I've gone through in other lifetimes. I don't really see them as separate and definitive. I don't see my life as Daniel James so separate and definitive from a variety of other incarnations where maybe I was like an avian creature, or maybe I was like a mantis on Mars or something. I feel that we're always sharing energy and experiences to and from each other on a quantum etheric level that we might not be conscious to, but it does become conscious when you suddenly download a vision of your lifetime there when you were going through something challenging and traumatic. There's just something to investigate. You don't have to dive in uh, head first. You don't have to change your whole life over it. But if it comes to you in the way that it did to me, there might be something relevant for you to unpack and investigate that could ultimately lead to some sort of healing.
That's beautifully said, and I feel that too. The resonance with what you said, I definitely feel on high levels, because that's the reason we experience almost all the big things that we experience, to either learn something and grow, and or to take care of traumas that exist within us, on soul levels, on human levels, on 3D life level, and everything in between. The multidimensionality of ourselves isn't comprehended by the majority of probably most of our collective, yet the people who have been exploring it for the thousands of years, where it used to be a commonplace and now it's become niche and small, it's growing. And the reason it's growing is because people are feeling the resonance there. They're feeling the pull to that. They're feeling the truth in the words, and the understandings. And on a soul level, that's how that happens. That's how it's allowed to come in. You can't have something completely shift your perspective or your life, or take on deep and profound meaning without there being a level of soul resonance, of truth, of need, for your focus to be in that direction or something. So I really feel resonant with that. We're getting onto the later end of things. I wanted you to chat with you too. I know we just glazed over it, but about the channeling process for you. I know you haven't been doing that anymore. I know that was a part of your transitory phase into this part of your experience. But when you were channeling, what were the beings that you were connecting to, and why do you feel like it was them rather than, God knows, any other consciousness that your soul has
Oh
connection
man, you couldn't have asked a better question. I just
Well,
love
thank
that.
you.
I know it's running on the later side, but this is actually really important as well. Um, when I first started channeling in 2015, I connected to a reptilian, what we call sauroid species from the Orion constellation, and they are called the Za of Orion. And there was a very, very specific reason that this was the first race that I connected to in the channeling state. And the things that they have taught humans over the years, and their mission statement, if they can have one, their sole reason for existing has got to be one of the most beautiful things that the most beautiful gifts that creation could offer a civilization like ours. So the Za of Orion, they are, like I said, reptilian, and that's sort of a trigger thing for a lot of people because a lot of the more superior malevolent races involved in the Orion Wars were reptilian and archetype. So what does that mean if you have, like, let's just say, for example, 100,000 third density civilizations that in some way, shape, or form have all been negatively affected by reptilian beings? um, warring reptilians, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-foot reptilians, that when I talk about trauma and how trauma can be coded in the DNA, and it can travel over multiple incarnations, we could actually be storing and carrying trauma from the experiences we've had with these reptilian beings. And if you're in any sort of the alternative networks, or you're a true, at some point you've heard about the presence of reptilians and the sauroid species, and how they sort of can affect Earth and other planets like Earth, third density planets. So then why would I channel a reptilian species as the first race I ever connect to in the channeling state? Well, not all reptilians are negative. Not all reptilians are malevolent. It's very important that we understand that there are positive and negative polarities for every different species archetype. And when I say species archetype, I mean like insectoid, avian, canine, aquatic, reptilian, feline. Okay, there are hybrid versions of those species and humanoid for every variant, and there's going to be malevolent and positive versions of all of them. But the problem with the reptilian archetype is that because they've been involved in so much trauma and conflict, and that energy is spread out so far over the cosmos, is that there is a lot of innate programmed fear to reptiles, to the reptilian species, whether they're positive or the stereotype against them, right? So the Za of Orion were specifically created to help balance out that energy and heal the trauma caused by the reptilian archetype, the sauroid species archetype. So what that means is it's the idea that they're not all bad, they're not all dangerous, they're not all scary and malevolent. So the Za of Orion were what I call ambassadors of a type, that their sole purpose is to make first contact to planets that are similar to Earth, similar to humans, that are third density, fourth dimensional beings that don't have a lot of open contact with star races. A common thing that happens is if you, let's say, for example, aliens landed on Earth right now. If we have contact with a lot of the extraterrestrial races that look very similar to humans, and also there's a misnomer with aliens as well, human beings in a human vessel, there's over 500,000 planets that have our exact human archetype on them. And there is also a variety of other races that look very similar to human, but might have other characteristics, whether they're archetypes because they're hybridized. But there are a lot of races that look similar to human. If they made first contact with us, they would not be very scary on a primal level, on a DNA level, on like a subconscious level, because they look similar to us. And even if you saw like a bird person or a human that was sort of crossbred with even insectoid or canine DNA, which is what I am from Sirius, we're actually canine human hybrids. Um, you might be like, oh man, that looks kind of strange. You look very different. I'm kind of freaked out, but you could get used to it. But when you see a reptilian, okay, there's something primal on an uncontrollably subconscious level that happens to people, that generally when when they're in the presence of a reptilian species, they can actually die of shock. Most people will just go catatonic, or they'll actually have a heart attack and die, because there's so much trauma coded to just the reptilian species that's how much it affects us on an energetic level. Just their presence can actually kill a person. I know that's intense. So why am I saying this? Well, the Za of Orion are a peaceful, loving uh, group of ambassadors who actually are first contact specialists for third density planets that are making open contact with extraterrestrials to heal that trauma. Do that? Well, for starters, most of the more malevolent war-based reptilians are built for combat, and they're like 6, 7, 8 feet tall, massive, much larger than human archetypes, and much more physically able for violence. Whereas the Za of Orion, They're like 3 to 4 feet tall, sort of like little sweet little Yoda types. They they
Not
almost look
very imposing.
not very scary or imposing, and they're actually built that way by design so that they're usually smaller and shorter than most of the races that they're introduced to, so that they're less threatening and more approachable. So everything from the way they physically appear to the way that they speak, to that their philosophies, to that their beliefs and their lifestyles are almost the opposite of anything threatening and harmful and war based, because their whole mission, their whole reason for existing, is at least what they say, is to help heal the reptilian archetype. They want to heal that collective trauma that's instilled in a lot of third density planets and races, whether they're human or not, from the reptilian trauma, to help balance out that karma in a sense. And I don't really mean karma in a way. Uh, I don't actually believe in karma the way that we all understand it, but for analogy's sake, uh, the energetic momentum behind the reptilian presence can be very threatening to most third density species. So the Zaw of Orion is the first race that I channeled specifically because I was a victim, quote unquote victim, of the reptilians. And I think a lot of us were. And I think a lot of us still might be, depending on what your belief structures are. But that, I don't mean to angle that in sort of like a victim way. I just mean that there's positive and negative polarities in all species. And so the Zaw of Orion are much more like the Yits in a sense, like Treb, peaceful, loving, uh, full of wisdom, and want to heal trauma and help planets prosper and recover from that. And they assume a lot of that responsibility for being reptilian, but they're bringing a more positive polarity of that. So that was the first race that I channeled, and the being that I work with, his name is Hermes. And after channeling him for many years, I did a 12 episode series called Stories from Orion. That's all about the Zaw of Orion and their species. And then I did channeling sessions like yourself for many people over the years, as Hermes, with Hermes, um, teaching all kinds of beautiful concepts. And I can say that he's made many friends amongst the humans on Earth, in the channeling state. And he's just the sweetest, most friendly, loving little creature that, anybody would have the opportunity to shake hands with and meet.
Well, that's amazing, and the healing archetype of a positive reptilian is something that there, in my opinion, isn't enough of on the Earth plane. And the few places that you can connect with that tends to be the people who probably have had trauma too. And I had heard a story from Treb, was actually asked by another person of some traumas that I had in this lifetime that I wasn't even aware of with reptilian consciousness, which was amazing to me after knowing Treb for a couple of years at that point. So I normally want to ease into this part, but we're running towards the tail end, so I'm just going to jump in. I want to do the lightning round with you now. I'm going to ask you some personal questions. If you don't want to answer them, don't. If you do, let us know. But these will be simple questions with simple answers. Well, sometimes not so simple answers, depending on who you are and what your thoughts are. But if you're ready, let's do it.
Let's go.
All right. What is your favorite color? That's the first one always.
I like green and blue side by side, right next to each other.
Very fascinating. Beautiful. What is your favorite food?
Oh, I love this. How cliche. How cliche of an answer is it to say like pizza pie, But
Hey, you're in good company.
I once watched you crush a large pizza to yourself, and I was in awe.
Did I become your hero instantly at that point?
I actually, during a channeling, I think it was Asheville, I watched Aridif take a bite of pizza. Okay?
Yes.
And he hated it. He hated it. He hated it. But I gotta say, I love a nice pizza pie.
Pizza is the best. You can't lose with pizza. Oh yeah, that was a fun time in Asheville. That was a great time. Um, what is your favorite band and or song?
Thank you. Thank you for asking that. Oh, to pick a favorite star from the sky. I'll keep it simple and short. My favorite band is Deftones. The Deftones.
Nice.
Yeah. And I think my favorite song by Deftones would be Minerva.
I've not heard that one. I'll have to listen to that one for sure. What is your favorite place in the whole world that you've been that you enjoy the being out in nature the most? Like the place you would go to if you knew Earth was coming to an end and you just wanted to be around beauty as you watch it burn. What's that one place that sticks out to you for the beauty of nature, the serenity and the feeling?
I have a special place. I will say that the most magical, just real quick, the most magical place I may ever go to on the planet Earth is Mount Shasta, California. Truly a beautiful, remarkable, high vibrational place to visit, and I love it so much. But to answer your question, I have a sentimental place that's near and dear to my heart, and it is actually on the Puget Sound, Olympia, Washington, on right on the water. There's a boardwalk that walks off that leads right into the Puget Sound Inlet that leads to the Pacific Ocean. And that place, if the world was ending, I would stand right there.
That's beautiful. I've never been to Washington. I got to California a couple of times, and I flew over a bunch of states. I'd been out to Utah before, but never explored the northern half of the western part of the country.
Oh, I love it.
So yeah, that's some place I definitely want to go and check out a bit more. Last question: what is your favorite childhood memory, the most endearing, the cutest, most adorable? It doesn't matter why it's your favorite, but what's your favorite?
Childhood memory. Wow. You should have asked me that beforehand so I could have prepared something special. Um, uh, let's keep it simple. Walking on the beach, Long Beach, with my mom in California.
Uh, had you never been to California at that time, or?
I was born and raised in Orange County, California. Um, and my mom would take me to the beach. And I remember as a little boy, um, when you grow up and you develop interests and you start getting into hobbies and, you become a teenager, your life changes a lot. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
But before that happened, when I was still just a little boy and life was simple, my mom took me, to the beach to walk along the beach and build sandcastles. Um, and so that will probably be my favorite memory.
So it's because of the fact it was simple. You were with your mom. You were out in nature, and it just felt good.
That's right. Simple. The most being on the ocean, get those negative ions from the sea and the sand, and just the smell of the ocean. And when you're a kid, and the only thing that matters to you is play. The only thing that matters is joy. You're not worried about work, money, stress, your health, you know, what you got to get to the gas station. It's just simple. And I remember that my mom, who still is to this day, but my mom was my best friend before, you become a teenager and life really happens. My favorite memory will be when life was, it didn't really seem like time moved. It was just you and your friend, and you're building a sandcastle.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, brother. It seems to be a common thread, at least for the last couple episodes that we've done. Wendy Kennedy shared her favorite, and that was simply to be able to go outside and jump on your bike and ride around town. The freedom that came with being a child at the time she grew up, which it started to shift between my time and yours, and shifted worse after yours, but. Um, it's definitely something that a lot of people now don't realize. existed, or maybe take for granted the opportunities that they did have as a kid when you are between our ages or older. So yeah, it's definitely the simplicity of childhood tends to be a joy, and I get to revisit that every day with Lily. She's 3 now, and she is amazing. And every time she sees something new or does something new or learns something new, it's just I can feel that childlike excitement, and it's a beautiful thing. So thank you for sharing that, brother. We don't have much longer, but I want to give you an opportunity for people who are like, hey, this Daniel James guy is pretty awesome, and what he's working on, I want to see. Uh, I know we've got description links and whatnot, and I want to make this short announcement too, guys. On a few of our previous episodes, the bios and links got wiped for our previous guests because we were changing things on YouTube, and it automatically did it for everything. We will get those fixed, but for now, Daniel's is or it will stay. The right links to go. But where can people find you? How can they get a hold of you if they're interested in creating a project for themselves, or helping you with one of yours, or being a part of watching one of yours, or any of those things that people might have invoked in our conversation? How do they get a hold of you? Where do they get a hold of you? What's the best way?
Thank you very much. I will make this so fast and concise because I know that we ran over time, and I'm so grateful to be on your show and have the opportunity to share. So here's where you guys can check me out if you're interested in connecting with me more and seeing what I'm up to. I have a couple of things. So we have a podcast. I do about a one episode a month on this one with my partner Lauren. This is called That's So Meta, and our slogan is we discuss the mystical, the magical, and the metaphysical. So we have a playlist on my YouTube channel, which is just Daniel James XIX. And you can check out all of our previous episodes on there, including our awesome interview with Rob.
That was
And
fun.
yeah, man. And then we have another podcast, which we have 2 seasons done, and we're currently doing season 3 now, which is Celestial Oddities, Pair of Normal Guys. And I do that with my partner, Frater Crow, where that podcast it's still metaphysical, but we go more into the esoteric philosophy, more into the paranormal concepts. And so we'll discuss more specific encounters and experiences. We have call-in episodes where people call in and share their paranormal encounters. So that one's really fun as well. And then, if you are familiar with Cosmic Agency, if you've ever heard of the Tyket and Pleiadian Contact channels, which are both in English and Spanish by Robert and Gosha, I am a voiceover artist. I provide voiceovers a few times a month for some of what I feel is some of the most cutting edge ET contact information that you can access on the internet, specifically for free. So you guys can go to Cosmic Agency, and this is Contact from Tyget and Pleiades, and I'm a voiceover artist on that channel. And then let's see, we also have if you're interested in seeing some of my older short films, we've done like a variety of dramas and some horror and things like that. Also a lot of extraterrestrial things like that. I have 2 channels. You can go to Tragic Hero Productions on YouTube to find my older short narratives that I've produced, and then you can go to Daniel James, where I also have a web series that I'm very proud of, very metaphysical, called Reality Mechanics. So you can find that on my personal YouTube channel, along with our podcast, That's So Meta. And then just the last couple things here. If you guys are interested in learning more about OMA, we do have a landing page for that, which is called storyofoma.com, where you can watch an introductory video about the story and the production process. We're going to be updating that actually this month, with where we're at in the production progress. And I'd love you guys to connect and get involved in that as well. And then in terms of services, I also offer a variety of services that I'd love to work with people, whether it's, I travel or I have services that I do online. If you're interested in any videography, we both shoot and edit, and that's with The Moment Imaging is our service name. So we have Instagram, we have YouTube, we have Facebook, we have a website. You can email us at themomentimaging@gmail.com, but we are a full service videography team. And then last but not least, I mentioned earlier on the program with Rob that I'm actually not channeling publicly anymore or offering it as a service. And that's specifically because I designed my own technique, which was part of the technique that I taught myself how to channel to begin with. I designed a technique that I called the Spirit Contact Protocol. And it is a type of channeling that is entry level that anybody can learn to do. And instead of channeling for people, I have a service now where I teach them how to connect directly to spirit themselves so that they can connect to their spirit guides, their passed on relatives, their star family, multidimensional aspects of themselves through a type of meditation, a very entry level, easy to follow step by step meditation that I wrote specifically to connect people to spirit. So that's why I actually don't channel anymore, is because I want to help people how to channel themselves. And that's a service that I offer through my website.
Oh, that's beautiful, brother. The alarm goes off right on time as our 90 minutes for the night is over. But before we jump off, I want to tell you personally, as a dear friend of mine, I appreciate any time I get with you. My life's been crazy busy with the kids and with this, and yours has been with the layers of work that you're doing. So I appreciate the time together, but I also appreciate you coming on and sharing your story, the concept behind your projects that you're doing, the reasoning, everything that you share. You always share from that level of your heart, which is much appreciated, because I feel in our community, a lot of that was lost in the last few years. And to bring it back to the forefront of the show, of work that you're doing, anywhere we can get it, I want it. And I think other people feel the same way. So thank you for being a friend. Thank you for being a guest. Thank you for being a huge part of our community that desires to move our community forward, and focusing on the things, in my opinion, that are most important. And that's getting people in touch with themselves so that they can find the best answers for them, and that they can have the empowerment that they need, instead of charging to the highest bidder or having others teach you how to live. I think it's so much more powerful to teach people how to teach themselves. And all the things that you've shared tonight really pin back on opening that up for themselves. So thank you, brother, for being who you are. Please send all my love to Lauren and Kalina, and tell from both of us, tell her hello, and we love her. And I love you too, brother. And thank you for coming tonight. More than all my heart, thank you.
Listen, man, thanks for having me. I love you very much. I love Kalina, and I will definitely give your love to Lauren, and she says hello. Listen, thanks for having me and giving me the opportunity to speak my truth and to share clearly. I was very excited to do so, so thank you.
I could feel that excitement in the way you shared, brother. Thank you so much for being here. And everybody who have been in the chat room actively talking, thank all of you guys for showing up here. Remember, we are here every Wednesday, 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. That's 7 Pacific. Next week, we have the one and only Lee Harris. Amazing, amazing chat. And the week after that, we're going to have Kalina Angel, the one and only beautiful sunshine of my heart, love of my life, mother to my daughter, and an amazing channeler. And we're going to have lots of guests coming up. So tune in every Wednesday. We're here live. I love you guys so, so much. Thank you for being a part of our experience and co-creation. And thank you for letting me be a part of your journey. I love you guys all very, very much. And I will see you next week on the other side. Good night, everybody.